never sleeps.
Welcome to Football Never Sleeps with our brand new theme music and the occasion to fire the person that's in charge of turning it on at the right time. And that's me. I'm Eric Hansen. He's Tyler James. And welcome to your Notre Dame football source for the rest of the season here on Monday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We've got lots to talk to you about today. Including the offensive line shuffle, all kinds of depth chart curiosities, how the heat in South Bend is going to help Notre Dame with the heat Saturday in College Station. All on. And we're taking your questions. Fill up the question queue. And now I'll explain the theme music and what it's supposed to sound like, because I messed that up big time. But we got a new theme from our friend Piano Man Steve. In a future episode, I'll give you a little bit more background on Steve. He's from Lincoln, Nebraska. He's coming to Notre Dame game later this year. And he and his band put together the theme music for us. And maybe we can have him sync it up for us. But Tyler has all the information in terms of what to like, what to subscribe to, and how to get your questions answered. And I'm going to get out of the way.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Eric. And thanks to that awesome new intro song. Please make sure that you are subscribed to us here on our YouTube channel. We're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers by kickoff, and we're just 160 away. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, help us out with a click. Doing so also allows you to submit questions during the show. So as you know, we like to interact with you guys and answer your questions as we're live here on YouTube. And if you're not a subscriber to our website, we forgive you for not taking advantage of the last 2 annual subscription deals. And we still have a 30-day free trial available on InsideNDSports.com. Use promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage, and special access to us on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time and share our inside information first. There's a link to sign up for the deal in the video description below. And I'm driving this ship tonight, so I'm going to set us up with the opening drive. And there's nowhere else to start except for the offensive line decisions. Notre Dame named a pair of first-time starters to anchor the left side of its offensive line with freshman left tackle Anthony Knapp and sophomore left guard Sam Pendleton. That will give Notre Dame 3 first-time starters on the offensive line at A&M, with junior Emil Wagner starting at right tackle. Eric, I wanted to start on that left side first. As you can imagine, if I told you these would be the 2 starters on the left side the day we learned that Charles Jagusa would get hurt, who would you be more surprised by being the starter, Anthony Knapp or Sam Pendleton?
Strangely, probably Sam Pendleton, because Anthony Knapp was listed as the number 2 guy when Charles Jagusa went down. Now, we all know that offensive line and really depth charts in general aren't always linear. And so I thought there would be a good chance either Tosh Baker or Emil Wagner would go to the other side. But Sam Pendleton kind of came out of nowhere in that he was the number 2 center. He was having a little trouble snapping the ball actually in the spring. And for him to beat out 2 guys with starting experience, I thought was incredible. But I think both of them are great stories. And as I learn more and more about them, I guess we should be less and less surprised that they've at least put themselves in a position to do this.
Yeah, I think I would go with Pendleton as well. I wasn't sold on Tosh Baker, so that certainly made it maybe a little bit easier. It's certainly, but not easy for Anthony Knapp to make that jump. But for Pendleton to beat out the guys that are the 2 leaders in starts on the offensive line in Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler, who combined to start 23 games last season, that's quite the impressive feat. And certainly something that I would not have anticipated a few weeks ago. as Notre Dame was rounding into form in preseason camp. As it relates to the left tackle, Eric, how much of the credit do you think belongs to Anthony Knapp, and how much did Tosh Baker sort of whiff on his opportunity there?
I'm going to give more of the credit to Anthony Knapp because, again, this doesn't happen very often. He'll be the 11th offensive lineman in Notre Dame history to start at least one game, and only the third to do it in a season opener. And so he was doing things that put himself in a position to be number 2. I mean, there were players with more star ratings than him. There were players with more experience than him. And so he at least put himself in a position. I do think Tosh Baker is part of that equation because it was right there for him to grab. And even Joe Rudolph, when we talked to Joe Rudolph shortly after the Charles Jagaza injury, he was very confident that Tosh Baker would take this and run with it. And he's had chances before. He started in the Sun Bowl at right tackle. He made a couple starts in 2021 at left tackle when that was an open job before Joe Alt seized it and took it over. But for me, Knapp gets more of the credit there.
Yeah, you have to give him credit for putting himself in a position to play, right? The job wasn't just handed over to him. And he didn't have a lot of time to sort of make that final push. When Jagasa's injury doesn't happen till camp, that meant that, I think a lot of us I think we had questions about Tosh Baker, but it's like, okay, that makes sense. So you're in camp. He's an experienced player. The transition should be easier for him. But I do think the fact that Knapp was able to prove to be better, at least in the coaching staff's opinion, despite the inexperience, says a lot about him. And sort of the fact that he didn't accept his fate as a backup when he came in as an early enrolled freshman, didn't sort of listen to the skeptics that maybe thought he was a 3-star and wasn't sure if he should even be a Notre Dame recruit. So I think that a lot of credit goes to Knapp, but I do think it's a bit of an indictment on Baker too. Like if Baker had met and reached his expectations for his career, it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't be able to step in and be the starter there. But yeah, you got to give the bulk of the credit to Knapp for making that move.
Tyler, what's interesting to me too is, Tosh also had a physical advantage in that he's 6'8" and he's right. 320. Anthony Knapp is 6'4". He's listed at 291. That is still the weight from June 21st. So he could be bigger. I think when I ran a feature late last week, kind of inside his climb, where I talked to his high school coach down in Roswell, Georgia, Chris Pruitt, and people saw the pictures from practice. They go, well, he looks pretty big. That, the one thing is, for a 6'4" guy, he does have long arms and he has huge hands. If you've ever shaken hands with him, he crushes your hand and it kind of envelops your hand too. And I don't have tiny hands. I have probably average or a little bit above. So it just, and you see that in his play. You see there's my hands with a Band-Aid. You see that in his play, the punch that he plays with and so forth. So he's a really, really interesting thing. And what was fun about talking to Chris Pruitt was they're not surprised down there. And they've sent linemen and other players to colleges. So it's not like this is the first one that's ever happened and it's a kind of school pride thing. This is, Chris Pruitt said, we kind of saw this coming.
All right. And what do you think of the way Joe Rudolph handled sort of coming out and telling us like, hey, Tosh Baker's our guy? What do you make of that? Like, was that sort of Rudolph's last ditch effort to maybe try to get some confidence in Baker and set him up to be in position to start, or do you think he had a sense that this might be the way it played out?
I think he was open-minded to where it could go, and I think he wanted to express confidence in Baker that he could get it done, and that was kind of his expectation. but he was open to it. I remember asking him a couple questions about Anthony Knapp because I figured this is going to be our only chance. How did this guy work his way into the number 2 spot? And he was pretty effusive in his praise of Anthony as well, in that, okay, if he's not, a starting tackle at some point this year, he's got a bright future here, and he's not waiting around for it to happen. And so I thought that was telling too. But that's my take on it. I mean, he's not. I would have really scratched my head if he came out and said, I don't know, Tosh, Pro Football Focus doesn't like him, and he was the lowest rated offensive player, so we're just crossing our fingers that it's going to happen. I had higher hopes for Tosh Baker. I'll say that. From the standpoint, he got beaten out by Emil Wagner at the end of spring and over summer. I thought it would light a fire under him. I thought with the increased size and with that desire, instead of bailing out and going into the portal, I thought this would kind of propel him, and it didn't. And again, credit to Anthony Knapp.
Yeah, Knapp didn't take that as like, okay, he's saying all these things about Tosh Baker, I should give up. I mean, we haven't talked to Knapp about it, but I wonder if that was even maybe more motivation for him, and in the way that, because I mean, Joe Rudolph could have easily just said, yeah, we're gonna see who's better between Tosh Baker and Anthony Knapp, but that's not how he handled it. So it is interesting how so much has changed since that day we were there talking to him, and says a lot about, like we said, what Knapp's been able to do.
Pendleton's name didn't even come up that day.
Yeah, we didn't even talk to him about Sam Pendleton because he was a backup center at that point, and center was a spot that was.
It actually felt like at that point, if there was going to be an upset at guard, it was going to be Sullivan Absher. Right. They moved him to challenge those guys, and then Sam Pendleton from North Carolina as well decided, I'm taking this over with my 15 college snaps under my belt.
Yeah, well, what does it say about Pendleton that he surpassed the 2 offensive linemen, like I said earlier, that had the most career starts on Indy's roster?
That he does things the right way, and that he's physically mature enough to handle it too. I mean, you remember him from recruiting. I mean, that family, you just wanted to box him up and bring him up to South Bend and have him live next door to you. I mean, great values. I mean, you saw how hard Sam worked in the weight room. You saw his dad. His dad looks like he's the kind of guy that would lift the car off of somebody and save their life and stuff. But you did see him doing things right in practice. And the fact that they were looking at him as a number 2 center showed a lot of confidence in him as understanding the game and being able to see fronts and things like that. And that's why I think he got a spin at center. Where I didn't see it coming at guard was just because I thought, well, they've kind of committed to this, and he's going to be the center, down the road at some point after Ashton Craig leaves. And he just had other plans and said, I'm strong, I'm here, and I can get the assignments right. I also think, Tyler, and you let me know what you think. In talking with Joe Rudolph, he's big on combination, who works well with somebody else. And right. I think as a pairing, those guys were impressive. And they kind of helped each other win the jobs.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because, like, at one point they were both taking reps at center, right? Like back in the spring. So they didn't have very long time to play next to each other. So that makes it extra impressive to me that those guys showed enough chemistry to be confident that, like, that was the biggest reason. Like, even when we were asked to predict who would be on the line, I was going with Coogan because I was like, if you're going to start Anthony Knapp, I would have guessed that they would put someone with more experience next to him. And so to me, that says that obviously Sam Pendleton is someone that they trust to know what he's doing. And he's a bright guy from every interaction that I've had with him. So that's not surprising to hear that he's on top of what's being asked of him, but it's definitely impressive. And yeah, I mean, it sort of speaks to like what we were talking about and the fact that it's actually almost more surprising that he's in the starting lineup than Anthony Knapp is if we rewind just a few weeks ago. We spent so much talking about the left side of the offensive line in camp that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the rest of it. How confident are you few days out here from the opener in the rest of Notre Dame's offensive line?
I'm probably more confident than you are. Well, and I say this because I've always been a big proponent of a Billy Schrauth. I felt like he would be the best. I thought he would eventually be an All-American. He'd be one of those guys we're talking about on draft night later in his career. And he's probably, I mean, you could argue the number one or two offensive lineman by far. I think Ashton Craig and Billy Schrauth are mentioned in that same breath. I've always been a fan of who I thought Emil Wagner would turn into. He just had to turn into that guy. I'm curious to see how he'll play, just having gotten to know him a little bit in recruiting and right before he came. I mean, I like the way he's wired. I like his maturity and how thoughtful he is, in addition to being really athletic and having put on the weight. The guy has surprised me, not recently, but just getting to this point, was Ashton. I mean, he was a 3-star guy, and there was not a lot, from Southern Indiana. People kind of thought, well, Harry Hiestand just went down there and because he lost somebody else and grabbed this kid. And Ashton Craig is impressive. And so I like the right side of the line and I like the center. And, but I mean, Tyler, I was trying to think if Notre Dame has ever only had 6 starts under its belt as a complete offensive line. And certainly it predates me being in South Bend of when they've been this inexperienced.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 5 fewer games of experience that you can have possible. Like,
right.
Like how many lines across college football will have that few starts on it this season? I mean, whatever sort of history you want to look at, whether it's current day or Notre Dame or the current day history across the sport, it's just very rare, especially at a program like Notre Dame. It's not like Notre Dame's losing a bunch of guys like at maybe like a MAC level, that they're losing all their guys to the transfer portal that are leveling up or something like that. But so it is shocking when you see it on paper, like, and those 6 career starts, that if you think about it, those 3 each for Schrauth and Craig came in November. So prior to November, came at the end of last season. So prior to November of last year, no one that's going to start on the offensive line at Texas A&M to start the season started a college football game. And that's wild to sort of think of it in those terms. So I do think certainly I am high on Ashton Craig and Billy Schrauth. Those are the 2 that I have the most confidence in. Emil Wagner, I'm a little more of a wait and see there. I think he has the potential to be good. I'm not sure exactly how great he will be this season, but the fact that he was able to secure that job and has the confidence from the coaching staff, and I think he should benefit from having extended time of working next to Billy Schrauth, and the chemistry that they have there should be hopefully noticeable if you're a Notre Dame fan when those guys take the field on Saturday. All right, Eric, I'm going to get us into our questions here.
Okay.
First up from Legion of the Leprechaun, our pal. He said, "What's up, fellas? Thank you." I assume that's Chad behind the account. Legion of the Leprechaun is a social club that we've partnered with, and we appreciate them stopping by. Let's go. Let's skip some of the Florida State, Georgia Tech questions. I do think we'll get into that later. So Mike DeVoy asked, the depth chart shows Emil Wagner at 290. Have they updated the stats? Seems pretty light for an offensive tackle, but we'll find out Saturday.
No. And they were supposed to I mean, the person that's kind of in charge of that, I've asked them a couple times, oh, yeah, it'll be this week. Oh, it'll be this week. I need to reach out to that person and find out if they're going to do that or if this is just part of the blind date nature of playing Texas A&M on Saturday. But those are old from the middle of June, from June 21st.
Yeah. If memory serves, they usually release another depth chart later in the week if there's any actual changes. So maybe they can update that in time for that later in the week. But yeah, it's been a little bit surprising that we haven't actually heard what the updated heights and weights are, but regardless of what Emil Wagner weighs, he's the guy that's being asked to go out there, and Notre Dame doesn't necessarily care what that number is.
We'll get things anecdotally from the players themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
Those guys weren't players that we had an opportunity to interview this fall. But like Kedron Young, for example, talked about his weight loss and gain, and Jeremiah Love is one, and Jaden Thomas, who lost weight. They all. So in the stories, I usually throw that, but we're keeping consistent with the depth chart to list what Notre Dame has listed.
All right. Speaking of Kedron Young, Ron Roberts says, look at the depth chart. I don't see Kedron Young. Is there a reason why?
My answer to that is he probably hasn't shown enough to be the third down back. Remember, he was playing catch up some this summer, having missed pretty much all of spring. Now you watch him in practice and you look at him, he's 227 right now. He's listed at 229. He's impressive looking. But when we watched, for example, the pass pro drills of the running backs, who jumped out at you among those freshmen? Wasn't it Aeneas Williams?
Yeah, Aeneas Williams he did a very good job, I thought.
Yeah, and so if Aeneas can do all the jobs, I think Kedron has to get good at everything if they're going to consider him as a third down option. And you mentioned this earlier, Tyler, when we talked about a third down specialist, there may, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price may be the better third down choices right now too.
Right.
Last year, Dylan McCullough was sold that Jabron Payne was the guy that could handle things on third down. I think this year it's hard to take one of those two guys off the field on third down.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of third downs too, right? Short yardage and long distance. And I think
even then they fit those.
Right. I think Aeneas Williams of the two freshmen, I think, is a better pass catcher as well. At this point, just more natural and has more experience doing it than Kedron Young does. Devin, to Ron's point, there were only 4 running backs listed on the depth chart. I would add that,
which is about as many players as any position listed.
It is as many. I double checked while you were talking. There's no other. Some positions have 3 listed, but no other position has 4. So to stretch it to 5, that's the reason why he's not there. It's not that he can't have a role or find a role this season, or even in the A&M game for that matter. But those are the 4 guys ahead of him. Devin Ford, I think his experience, and I think he can do some of that physical stuff as well. So I think that's the reason why we don't see Kedron Young there. He just hasn't jumped up ahead of any of those guys yet, but I think he isn't necessarily that far away either. All right, another one from Ron. Speaking of the offensive line, what do you think the locker room dynamics are with the 3 experienced players not starting?
I haven't canvassed that, to be honest with you. I'm not going to say that they're super happy. I think the leadership of this team is strong enough that if they are not happy about it, that they'll hear it from the captains and leaders on this team and say, hey, you had your chance. And I think that's all anybody asks for, is a chance to compete for it. I think if, let's say, Anthony Knapp was this 5-star guy and Tosh Baker never got a chance to show himself, then I think he'd be bitter. But neither of those guys are. Anthony Knapp was a 3-star guy. Sam Pendleton was 4-star, kind of fringe in and out of the very bottom of the Rivals 250. So I think in that sense, I don't expect bitterness. I expect those guys to continue to work and try to get their opportunities.
Yeah, of the 3, I think I seem to recall Joe Rudolph speaking about Pat Coogan as like, hey, listen, he's going to be a leader no matter what role we ask him to do. And so I think there's a lot of confidence in how he'll handle this. I don't know a ton about how Tosh Baker or Rocco Spindler have handled this. I think I would point to like, hey, we're talking about inexperienced guys that are replacing you. That doesn't mean that those guys are going to play the whole season, right? There's plenty of reason to believe that you could get into the lineup, whether it's by their failures or their injuries. I mean, Rocco Spindler lost his job at the end of last season because of injury, so he's certainly familiar with how quickly things can change. So I think that those guys have to be ready. I think they're probably pretty mature about it. You can understand as guys who've been through a number of offensive line coaches in their time at Notre Dame, maybe they feel like this is Joe Rudolph's the newer coach, but like especially for Coogan and Spindler, they were given their chance as starters last year, so they have a whole basically year's worth of resume that Joe Rudolph was aware of beyond just what they were able to do in this fall camp. So I think it's an important question and something that Notre Dame needs to monitor and make sure it doesn't like impact the offensive line room in a negative way. But I'd like to imagine that it won't have a significant impact on those young guys. Rajon asks, has anyone stood out to you as someone who has benefited greatly from Loren Lando's approach?
You know, Rajon, we ask, I think I can speak for Tyler for this too, and some other people on the beat, probably as many players as we can just to get a feel for that. And universally, there's been what feels like genuine enthusiasm for what Loren Lando has brought to the approach. What differs is their answers, because it's tailored to their position group and sometimes even tailored individually to them. And so everybody has a little bit of different story why it's been successful for them. But maybe the best universal concept that I could pull from those conversations is how what they do in the weight room and how they train translates to the field. That Loren Lando is very good at being able to make sure those movements sync up to what they do as football players. And I thought that was an interesting comment that everybody pretty much had.
Yeah, and I know Jaden Thomas is someone who really reshaped his body and put an emphasis on that. I think it's important to note, like, it's not just the strength and conditioning staff too. Like, the players have to take ownership of this too and put in the time and effort to make those things happen. So I think you could point to a number of different guys that have done that. I think even Anthony Knapp, like, it's hard to imagine a freshman getting to this spot without significant help in the strength and conditioning program to be physically ready for what he's being asked to do, especially as an undersized guy. So I think there's lots of different examples that you could point to as someone that has benefited from his approach.
He was in the 260s when he arrived in January.
All right. Scott Fegan says, guys, I know we have a very young line, but do you think the experience at coaching on the offensive side, Denbrock, et cetera, that can make up for some of the growing pains?
I think that is a really good point. I do think Mike Denbrock can scheme around some things and maybe not make the inexperience as pronounced. Now, there's only so many things you can hide on the offensive line, but I think Mike Denbrock will maximize the strengths of the offense and mitigate the weaknesses. Now, that doesn't mean make them go away, but right. I think I have a lot more confidence, for example, in Mike Denbrock being able to handle 8 in a box or drop 8 and rush 3 than Jared Parker was. And so that's why I have kept saying, and we'll see if I'm saying this at the end of the year, but what I've been saying all season is what a really good hire this has been for Notre Dame and bringing Mike Denbrock back to Notre Dame for a third time.
Yeah, I agree there. I think you like what, especially at the top with Mike Denbrock, what Notre Dame has there. The only thing that's like, well, you got some guys working together that hadn't spent a ton of time working together. Certainly you have some previous connections with some of the guys on staff, but making sure they're all on the same page and being able to handle that. But yeah, I do think that experience should show up. And as we may get into later, like, I think that goes for the defense too. I think Marcus Freeman talked about how adjustments are such a big important part of season openers, because you don't exactly know what the team is going to do based on, you don't have a lot of film of their current makeup to see. So I think that the Notre Dame's coaching staff will make a difference there. All right, Legion of the Leprechaun asked us, who will score first, offense, defense, or special teams? Also, what are your score predictions? And thanks a lot, Chad, for submitting that.
So who will score first, offense, defense, or special teams? So
yeah, he wants to get in on place your bets a little early, it sounds like.
Okay. Well, okay, he's not asking if the defense will be scored on before Notre Dame's offense.
I think he's asking if the defense will score the touchdown. Yeah, right. Or I guess the safety could be scored as well.
Well, I'm going to go with the offense. Okay, is there another part to the question that I missed?
Well, your score predictions. Do you have a score prediction for the game yet?
Yes, I do. I am picking Notre Dame to win 24-17.
All right. I have not nailed myself down to a prediction yet. I'm in the 17-9 range. I think it's going to be low scoring. So that's what my Monday prediction is. Maybe I'll change it before we get to the end of the week. And that would be in favor of Notre Dame. I just don't expect it to be a very high scoring game right now. So that would be my take on it. All right. A little bit more on the coordinators in the cat and mouse game. Question from Bob Oxnard. In the cat and mouse games between offensive defensive coordinators, Denbrock is our cat. Who is A&M's mouse? And will Elko control in play-by-play?
Okay, I don't understand the question. I'll let you answer it first. I don't understand who is A&M's mouse. Carter Carls.
I think it's who's as I understand.
And Bob, I love you. I'm dense. I'm trying to understand that analogy.
Who will Notre Dame's offense try to expose? I think is what the question is. That because
I think A&M's apparent weakness, I think the one where you are going to test is their secondary. It was the weak part of their defense last year. They were much better against the run, and they have a lot of newcomers back there, and I think that's fair to test it. What's not as obvious in testing is running right at Texas A&M and that pass rush and using Riley Leonard in that running game. I think that's maybe the not easy to predict part of what Mike Denbrock's going to do. And then will Elko control in play-by-play? I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I don't know if he just means like will the A&M defense. I guess broadly he could be just asking, is he the one calling plays? And I do think that will be what happens, but I don't know that for certain. I haven't tried to drill down.
If he is not calling the plays, he's certainly going to have his handprints all over that defense.
Yeah,
which is kind of the way it worked at Duke.
Irish fan asks, will we find out tomorrow who's number 86, i.e. the last man out? And obviously not talking about Cooper Flanagan.
I may do a little bit of digging and see if I can find out that who unofficially. I was curious if it was going to come up in today's press conference, and I couldn't use my questions to ask that question. My sense is that Notre Dame has a work around it, and they already knew who it was going to be long ago, but I will do some digging tomorrow. So Irish fan, that may be something you find out tomorrow. If you do, we'll put it on our message board.
Yeah, I don't know how open Notre Dame wants to be about that. So I don't know what sort of on the record information we can report about that. I think especially with where things are heading with NCAA proposals on scholarship limits, it's a bit of a different game these days, and with NIL involved. So I was asked this on the Insider Lounge earlier, and I said I think we're going to have to like rethink the way we talk about scholarship charts because of the way things are progressing. Because I don't know if we're going to get sort of a straight answer on exactly how things are shaking out. But they're not practicing with 85 guys on scholarship. And tomorrow being pointed out as the first day of classes, which is the deadline. That's why Irish fan did that. So smart to bring that up. All right, we'll keep rolling with questions. MJH Irish 84 asks, what impact can Jordan Faison have in the return game?
Provided he is the number one punt returner, and there was a or with Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse. I mean, his speed, I think, and the way he can cut so fast. I mean, watch him play lacrosse. Put a lacrosse stick in his hand and let him do that down the field with the punt returns. But I mean, I think Jordan Faison, in just the little bit we saw him returning punts, was pretty dynamic. Jaden Greathouse is a different kind of punt returner, a little bit more physical. And so I like the fact that those are their Notre Dame's top two options.
All right, sorry, I was typing the answer to TD4ND is asking for clarification on what is the last man out, and it's just that Notre Dame is at 86 in terms of projected scholarships based on the guys who were previously on scholarship. Well, I did a typo there right when I was talking. The limit is 85, so that's what Irish fan was referring to. And sorry if we didn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't elongate my answer
when we were speaking that way. But I do think Jordan Faison can be a weapon in the return game. I had asked, or I prepared a question in terms of Faison or Greathouse being listed as the punt returners of who we think would be more dangerous. I think Faison, as long as he protects the football, is someone that I think can make an impact in the punt return game. All right, let's take a break from questions, and I'm going to do a little word from our friends over at Autograph. If you haven't heard us before or heard this discussion before, I hope you check out the Autograph app. Autograph is one of our new partners here with Inside ND Sports. You can now find Inside ND Sports content on the Autograph app, and you can get that on in the Android or iOS stores. It's free to download. The company, which is co-founded by Tom Brady, believes that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. There are many cool tools and features in the app, including the daily replay, which summarizes the news from the previous day with links to the content you may have missed. You can download the app using the QR code at the bottom of our screen or by using the link listed in the video description. From there, go find our content in the Notre Dame community. Make sure you use the referral code INDS so Autograph knows that we sent you. All right, Eric, let's get back to some more questions. And we had a couple as it relates to the Georgia Tech Florida State game that we saw on Saturday over in Ireland. Mike DeVoy said Eric was spot on predicting Georgia Tech would be a good and real threat as a trap game. Since it will be hard to overlook them now, who's the front runner for trap game?
Okay, Florida State. Just kidding. Wow. There's not a lot of good. I would say Miami, Ohio, maybe. I mean, they are picked to be the best team in the MAC. They have a good defense. I think for different reasons than I had picked Georgia Tech. If I no longer have them, I can't stay with them. I will go with Miami, Ohio. I think the timing is good, and I think Notre Dame doesn't have, a game right before that. I guess Louisville's afterwards. And I don't consider Louisville a trap game since they lost to them last year. I'll throw them out. So I'm ridding us of all options. So I'm going to go with Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could throw Purdue in there because Purdue, weird things happen.
Place Big Ten team.
Weird things happen in West Lafayette. In that stadium, it usually is inexplicable. So if you're going to pick a random team, why not pick a team that is used to inexplicable things happening? So I don't really know what you could put. I mean, Virginia is another team that I think is a little feisty, but there's only so much we know about these teams, so it's hard to say what a trap game would qualify as.
I mean, the interesting thing about the MAC teams, though, Tyler, is that they are picked to be good in their conference. I realize it's not the Big Ten, but Purdue's picked 18th out of 18, and they could be wrong about them. And Virginia and Stanford are like 16 and 17 or 15 and 17. So it's not like they're higher. It's shocked me that Virginia was picked that low. So
yeah, and they went with I think they announced Anthony Calandria as the starter, who's the younger, maybe more exciting option as the quarterback there. So I'll be interested to see what sort of trajectory that Virginia offense takes. Joe Long asked, why is Eric wearing a tie? You want to fill him in? There's a good answer for that. So I figured
I'm still in my TV clothes. I didn't have a chance, so I went over there and did a spot for WSB TV here in South Bend. And literally I'll blame the tie and my TV appearance for me messing up the music because I didn't have enough time to rehearse it. But seriously, there was not any time to change. Otherwise, on a 90-some degree day, I would be out of the tie and out of these dress pants as well. I'd have shorts on.
All right. Will Eli Raridan play a role in the red zone? I see he's listed as the third tight end. That's a question from Captain Crunch.
I think he's a or, so he's second or third. Cooper Flanagan have a really good camp. I mean, I think he'll have a role other places on the field. I don't look at him as a red zone specialist, even though he's 6'6" or 6'7". Kevin Bauman can help him in the red zone, and he's not listed in the top 3. So I have high hopes for Eli Raridan that he will start to kind of show the potential we saw in him as a recruit when he was kind of a late riser in that cycle. How about you, Tyler? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that he's going to be able to find a role. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I think there will be there's some interchangeability with those guys. It's not like Cooper Flanagan is is that superior as a blocker versus Eli Raridan, or Eli Raridan is that much better of a pass catcher. I think they have a pretty good, well-rounded group in terms of those top 3 tight ends. So I mean, yes, I think we're probably going to see less 12 personnel this season. I don't know that we're going to see as many multiple tight end lineups, but I do think that there will still be some ways to use 2 and 3 tight end sets in certain scenarios for Notre Dame's offense. So I wouldn't be surprised if Flanagan and Raridan find some niches in this offense behind Mitchell Evans. Scott Fegan asked, do you see Leonard leading the rushing effort Saturday? I'm thinking scrambles and design runs may push him to have the most yards. Is that a recipe for winning the game?
I would not rule that out. I would not predict that. I think Jeremiah Love will be Notre Dame's leading rusher, but I can remember, and again, this is Mike Denbrock running the offense in that game in 2015 in the Hurricane at Clemson, him leaning into Deshaun Kaiser doing a lot of running in that game because Clemson was bound and determined, and they had the personnel to do it, to shut down Notre Dame's traditional running game. So Mike Denbrock's counterpunch was to run Kaiser outside and to throw passes to CJ Procise, who was the running back. And that got Notre Dame back in the game. So I would not rule that out with Riley Leonard being the leading rusher. I'm just not predicting it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't know that Notre Dame would want him to be the leading rusher because it probably means unless he has like 200 yards and Jeremiah Love has 100 yards or something like that. But I think Notre Dame will want him to to establish a running game beyond just Riley Leonard. Now, I mean, it could go. It could end up that Riley Leonard ends up tucking the ball in a lot of his drop back opportunities and tries to pick up yards with his legs. And so maybe that allows him to do that. But I don't know that I would want to predict it. I do think the chance that could happen, but I do have some confidence in Notre Dame's running game, even though Notre Dame does have the experienced offensive line. MJH Irish 84 asks, Riley Leonard has the most upside of any Notre Dame quarterback since who?
I'm trying to answer this thoughtfully because I think we're thinking about what we know of Riley Leonard. Thoughtful. What we know of Riley Leonard and what he could turn into. And I think Sam Hartman was a different deal. I think Sam Hartman was a proven guy that didn't have the skill set. There wasn't a lot of untapped potential there. So somebody that, Deshaun Kaiser,
Yeah.
Maybe we have to go further back than that, but I'll say Deshaun Kaiser, because
Yeah,
Kaiser ended up being a second-round draft choice.
right. Even with like not necessarily continuing his upward trajectory that we thought he might have. So yeah, I think it'd be harder to go back farther than Kaiser. I think he could. I mean, maybe Riley Leonard proves us wrong and becomes even better than that, and you start talking about Brady Quinn or Jimmy Clausen. But I think that I think I would probably go with Kaiser. All right. I think we've covered most of the questions. Keep them coming. I'll keep an eye out for them, but we'll get back to some more of the depth chart curiosities from what we saw with the official release of the depth chart today here on Monday. Rod Hurd II was listed as Xavier Watts' backup at field safety with Luke Talich behind Adon Schuler at boundary safety. What does this say about the develop of Schuler, Eric, and how much Hurd do you think we'll see?
Yeah, I have a notebook that I'm going to post right after we get done with the show, and that is my lead is Adon Schuler and the defensive backfield. And I mean, if there weren't all this stuff going on with the offensive line, Adon Schuler would be a really big storyline with this team. I mean, you're talking about a guy that beat out a really experienced grad transfer from Northwestern to make his first college start. A sophomore that didn't play a lot of meaningful downs last year and had one of the best off seasons of any Notre Dame player. And it's not like Rod Hurd isn't going to do a good job for Notre Dame. I think he'll be used a lot. I think the fact that the cornerback room has thinned out a little bit, maybe they are also, and I tried to ask Marcus this. I tried to get 3 questions for 2 today, and I think I kind of got away with it.
Yeah, he helped you out a little bit.
He did. And so what I was trying to dig at was, are they looking at Rod Hurd at multiple positions? And he did say that. He said, yeah, he can play nickel, he can play corner, he can play safety. So he may turn into more of a utility guy with Adon Schuler being the main safety. But I'll tell you what, Adon Schuler, every time I saw him in practice, he was impressing me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Hurd's probably the next off the bench at either safety spot, despite being listed as that field safety. And I do think there's going to be a third safety role in a dime package and stuff like that will allow him to get on the field. So I'm going to try to be shorter in my responses and so we get through a few more topics here at the end of the show. Next, Eric, I wanted to ask you about the receivers all being listed as oars. And so there's 6 receivers. I'll run through those real quick. Bo Collins and Jaden Thomas at boundary, Jaden Greathouse and Jaden Harrison at slot, and Jordan Faison and Chris Mitchell at field. Which one of those 6 receivers do you think plays the least against Texas A&M?
Probably Jaden Harrison, but
yeah,
he, again, was kind of the surprise. I mean, in the spring, I wouldn't have said he was even in the rotation, and he really impressed me this fall, and I was kind of a honk on him of being in the rotation. And that doesn't mean like Deion Colsey, Micah Gilbert, and those guys aren't going to play, but I'd say Jaden Harrison plays the least of those guys.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Let's get to some more things that Marcus Freeman talked about. He said that this was Notre Dame's healthiest fall camp in the last 15 years, according to some data that they were able to put together. The team practiced 15% more this fall camp than previously. Only 1 concussion was diagnosed, and the team was down 30% overall in the combination of concussions, strains, and sprains. How much do you think that will matter come Saturday?
I think it matters a lot, especially since they're going to rely on their depth so much against Texas A&M and other teams. But in that heat down and humidity down in College Station, I think that's huge. And I think this is a reflection, Tyler, of Marcus wanting to lean into sports science. John Waggle, who was hired in the summer of 2022, Lauren Lando, why he emerged as the top candidate to permanently replace Matt Bayless after having an interim director there. I think these are all things that Marcus strongly believes in. And this is him saying, I'm fact checking you people that think it's the coach's fault whenever there's an injury.
Yeah. Yeah, I had considered once like starting a thread on the Insider Lounge of just like injuries that I see reported from other teams. Like, I just think there's just a lack of context a lot of times that Notre Dame fans and fans of all programs don't pay that much attention to what's going on elsewhere, and so they're just not as familiar with injuries. And so when something happens, they want to blame someone when that's just the way the game works.
As long as they don't blame us, I'm okay with it.
Although I will say that I'm too superstitious. If I was Marcus Freeman, I wouldn't be trotting out that stat until after the season. Like, there's still time for those guys to get hurt before they play Texas A&M. So I don't know. I'm a little too superstitious to do that. But I think he was very proud of the way they handled camp, and I think he has a right to be proud about that as well. Speaking of handling things, South Bend is in the middle of a heat wave right now. Excessive heat warnings have already been issued for Tuesday, stretching basically the whole day, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. with heat index values around 105 degrees. I think it hit 92 degrees at around 5 p.m. on today, Monday. You asked Marcus Freeman about the value of this. What did he have to say, and do you buy it as well?
Yeah. So what he said was, thank the lady on top of the dome. Thank the good Lord, because this is exactly what Notre Dame needs. This is in time. I mean, it's not too late to acclimate. And they have done things in terms of building their roster so that they are a deep team. They've had good habits about hydration. They've kind of walked through this. Well, now they get an unexpected dress rehearsal, which I think is really going to help them. And in terms of the heat, they're going to take advantage of it. I mean, they are practicing in the late afternoon, the hottest time of the day in South Bend. As Tyler mentioned, it got up to 92, 93-ish today. It's supposed to be 99 tomorrow with humidity on top of that. And it's going to be pretty hot on Wednesday. So the high in College Station on Saturday is supposed to be 89 with a low of 73. So hotter here in South Bend. So it shouldn't be culture shock.
Yeah, I think you just have to make sure that you don't get worn out by it this week. You have to be careful to use it to your advantage in terms of helping you, but also not making sure that it ends up being a hindrance and that you wear your team out this week. So I think it might be a little bit better to have it happen earlier in camp and maybe be a little bit more, but maybe just the fact that you're sort of going from here to there with the hot weather is something that your body can handle well enough. I'm not smart enough when it comes to sports science to know exactly how much that can matter. And if something that's happening only a few days in advance is enough to have an impact on you later this weekend. So we'll see how it all plays out.
You are not going to replace John Waggle if he leaves then, if you're not smart enough to predict that.
I will not. I do not have the facilities to outsmart John Waggle. Marcus Freeman emphasized the importance of adjustments in season openers. I mentioned that earlier. Do you think that gives Notre Dame an advantage with its coaching staff going into this game?
I do, given the experience. Al Golden was talking about this the other day, and I can't remember how deep they were into the Navy game where they saw something that they recognized. Right. I mean, it was a real blind date, and they were flying by the seat of their pants. And you had this experienced guy with head coaching college experience, defensive coordinator experience, and then NFL experience. And he adjusted very well. And this is an older team on defense. I think the only reason it might be a little bit harder for the offense to adjust to surprises is because you don't have a lot of starting experience at any position on the offense. I think Mitchell Evans is the only returning starter from last year. Now, Riley Leonard obviously started at Duke, and some of these grad transfers started for their teams, but as far as starting for Notre Dame. But I think that's why you go out and you get Mike Denbrock as your offensive coordinator when Jared Parker leaves. And again, I think this was a good investment. That doesn't make it easy, but I think Mike Denbrock is a guy that I've seen enough calling games where he usually has a pretty good counterpunch to the surprises.
Captain Crunch asks us, do you see KVA being Kingston Viliamuasa playing some will with Drake Bowen at the Mike linebacker spot?
It's possible. I mean, in talking to Max Boa, they are really dedicated to this concept of 5 guys being part of a rotation and not having ones and twos. And Max Bolo was very colorful in the way he expressed that. I could see Bowen and KVA on the field at the same time. Maybe Kingston is in a role of rushing the passer on some third downs, third and longs, and so forth. I think I saw a question too. Somebody wondered if KVA was actually 250 pounds. On Notre Dame's depth chart, he's listed as that, but on the roster, he's 240. I think that was just a typo.
Yeah, because and he's listed in 2 different spots on the depth chart. At the will linebacker, he's 240, but at Mike linebacker, he's 250. So I don't think he gains 10 pounds depending on what position he plays.
He has a weight that he puts in his pocket to play one of those positions.
Yeah, maybe the green dot weighs 10 pounds and we just didn't know about it.
But what they've done, Captain, is that they've trained these guys to play all 3 positions. I don't think many of them will play all 3, but I think you'll see a lot of them play 2 of them.
Yeah. And I think especially in some pass rush situations, that's when KVA, I think, will find his most playing time early on. So I don't know. It's hard for me to get a sense of how often they're going to take Jack Kaiser off the field. So if Kingston were to get some playing time, I think maybe he's at Will and Kaiser's at Mike rather than Bowen at Mike. But I think it's certainly possible that we could see some of that combination, and I think they'll mix and match, like you said. All right, Scott Fegan wanted some recruiting information, so I was going to spend a little time talking about the biggest update since our last show as it relates to recruiting, and that is Notre Dame offered 3 new wide receiver targets in the 2025 class. Obviously, a position of need. Notre Dame only has 2 commits in Jerome Bettis Jr. and Elijah Burris, and is hoping to sign 2 more at the position. So the 3 guys that they offered are all committed elsewhere because a lot of recruits at this time of the recruiting cycle are already committed somewhere. But I'll give you a quick sort of thumbnails about them. We have much more information about them on InsideNDSports.com if you would like to learn more about them. Jace Brown is committed to UCLA. He's 6'2", 194 pounds, out of Downey Warren High School in California. Rivals ranks him actually as a tight end, as the number 27 tight end in the class. I reached out to our analysts to sort of get an explanation, and they told me that he plays bigger than he's sort of listed, and they sort of see him as a flex tight end in the future. But we'll look to see him again this senior season.
Not a tight end,
this senior season, to see what he looks like. So obviously Notre Dame likes him as a receiver. He had 46 catches for 560 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. His quarterback is also committed to UCLA. It's Madden Ayamalieva, who's the younger brother of Nico, who was a 5-star quarterback and signed with Tennessee previously. Another one, SMU commit, Jalen Cooper. He's from the San Antonio era, Cibolo Steele High School in Texas. He was the most prolific of these 3 guys. He had 63 catches for 1,578 yards and 23 touchdowns last season. He has good speed. He's reported 100-meter splits in the low 10s for his 4x100-meter relay team. Rivals rates him as a 4-star recruit and the number 57 receiver in the 2025 class. He's at 6'1", 161, so a bit more of a slight guy. And the third one is maybe the most interesting to me, and it's South Florida commit Antavius Richardson. He's from Greenville High School in Georgia. Was already committed to Georgia State, then committed to USF, and now is looking at some other options. He's still committed to USF, but Notre Dame's coming after him. Alabama's been having some conversations with him. North Carolina and Duke offered him recently. So his profile continues to sort of expand. Rivals currently ranks him as the number 59 cornerback in the 2025 class, and that's the position that South Florida has recruited him to. He plays mostly running quarterback. Like, he plays quarterback, but he runs more than he throws for his high school team, and he's played a lot of safety. He was a sprint. He swept the state championships at the GHSA 1A Division II level in the sprints with a 100-meter time of 10.76, a 200-meter time of 21.49, and a 400-meter time of 49.38. That's a small school level in Georgia, but to be able to run with the fastest marks at all three of those is pretty impressive. So an intriguing athlete whose recruiting profile I think is only going to continue to expand with Notre Dame in the mix and Alabama trying to get involved as well. All right. I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to mention before we get out of here, Eric?
I want to thank Piano Man Steve for doing our theme song. We will have it synced up better next week. And I'll give you some information about him. He's a really interesting guy, does online concerts and stuff, and he teaches piano online and so forth. I want to thank everybody for all their great comments and questions. Even the ones I didn't understand, they're good. It's my density. And thank you for noticing that I was wearing a tie, my TV clothes today.
Yeah, you really showed me up. I'm gonna have to get dressed up to match it.
You had your shades on for your TV appearance.
Yeah. Well, I asked Pete. I said, "Shades on or off?" He said, "Yeah, let's keep them on." I said, "I know they're not white like Eric's, but will you let me keep them on?" So he let me do that. I wanted to take a moment to spend some time telling you about our new partner, Autograph. You can now find our Inside ND Sports content on the Autograph app, which is free to download on Android and iOS devices. The company, which was co-founded by Tom Brady, believes that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. There are many cool tools and features that you can mess with in the app, including the daily replay, which summarizes the news from the previous day with links to content you may have missed. I imagine there'll be plenty of stuff in there on Tuesday morning with everything that happened here today on Monday. You can download the app using the QR code at the bottom of our screen or by using the link listed in the video description. From there, go find our content in the Notre Dame community. Make sure you use the referral code INDS so Autograph knows we sent you. If you're not a subscriber to our website, we have forgiven you for not taking advantage of the last 2 annual subscription deals, but we still have a 30-day free trial to InsideNDSports.com available. Use promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and special access to us over on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time and share our inside information first. Our YouTube schedule for this week, we'll have our Inside ND Sports podcast uploaded on Thursday. We'll do Place Your Bets on Friday. We have something special coming for you after the game on Saturday that I don't want to give away just quite yet. And then we'll also have the post-game takeaways that Eric and I were doing last season. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and help our push to 3,000. We thank everyone for joining us tonight. Very lively bunch. I know some new faces. Some folks even saying they just discovered us. They're here. They didn't know that we did this. So appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully you've subscribed and check out all of our content on InsideNDSports.com and enjoy your week.